So this weekend sees the first game of the new Premier League season. In this video I just look back at a few of the memorable opening days I can remember over the years. Hello, I'm Richard and welcome back to my channel over and over and over again, which features everything to do with Arsenal. In this video I just really want to look back at some of the memorable opening day games that I've witnessed over the years watching Arsenal, of course, ahead of this weekend's first game of the new season away at Fulham. Just before I get into all that, I just want to make sure that you're all subscribing to the channel if you haven't already done so. I've noticed that the views have really gone up actually on some of the videos recently, which is great, but the subscribing numbers are slowing down a little bit. So if you are watching the videos and you're liking them, please click the subscribe button. Please give the videos a thumbs up as well. All that helps me to grow the channel and helps me to reach a new audience. That would be really much appreciated. So the opening day of the season, of course, is always a day of great anticipation, isn't it? Everybody's starting on the same number of points. Everybody's got the same sort of dreams and hopes, haven't they, for the following 9 months that are coming up. So it's a really exciting time to be a football fan, really, isn't it? Usually it doesn't last that long until all those dreams are shattered. But certainly for the first game, everybody starts on the same number of points, and it's just a great time. So I just really wanted to look back at some of the more memorable opening days that I can remember from my time watching Arsenal. Now, my first season going to Highbury was 1981-82, but unfortunately I didn't start going until into the season, sort of October time. It was my first game, so I missed the opening day that season, which was a 1-0 defeat against Stoke City. So it wasn't something that I particularly I've never looked back on in any regret that I missed that game, because by all accounts it wasn't the greatest game. The following season, 1982-83, was the first season when I could have gone to the first game, but we played Stoke City away, and as I was only 14 at the time, I didn't really feel that maybe going to Stoke City on my own was perhaps a good idea. So I gave that a miss, and again, I don't regret that decision at all, because again we lost 2-1. So the first actual opening day game that I went to was actually a really memorable one. It was Charlie Nicholas's debut at the start of the 1983-84 season at home to Luton. I did feature that in a video actually a couple of weeks ago, if you remember. We did win that game 2-1. Tony Woodcock and Brian McDermott scored the goals, and it was a really good atmosphere that day. It was one of the, for me anyway, it was one of my more memorable opening days that I can remember personally. So that was a really good one. The following season, 84-85, we were at home again against Chelsea. It was actually an early kickoff. I think it was something like 12 o'clock. On police advice, they were worried about potential trouble, although from what I remember, the early kickoff didn't stop the trouble. We drew 1-1 actually with Chelsea. They'd just been promoted to the first division. Paul Mariner scored for us, and it was Kerry Dixon actually who equalised for Chelsea, and the game finished 1-1. The following season, of course, 85-86 was the season directly after the Heysel disaster, and we actually played Liverpool first game of the season up at Anfield. I didn't go to that one, and again, it wasn't something I ever thought too much about afterwards, as we lost 2-0. 86-87, the first game was at home to Manchester United. George Graham's first game. Again, this was a game I featured on one of my videos a couple of weeks ago. We won that game, of course, 1-0 against Manchester United. Charlie Nicholas scored the goal late in the game in front of the North Bank. So that was a real memorable opening day, and a good start, obviously, for George Graham, and the start of that new era of success, the first real era of success that I experienced with the club. The following season, 87-88, it was another memorable first game actually. We played Liverpool at home. It was really, really hot, about 90 degrees. It was packed. Highbury was packed. I think there was 54,000, 55,000 in the ground. I remember standing at the back of the clock end, couldn't really see much. I remember Paul Davis equalised with a diving header at the clock end in the first half, but Liverpool won 2-1. Of course, that was a year when Liverpool was unbeaten in their opening 29 games of the season. I think John Barnes and Peter Beardsley made their debuts that day, John Aldridge as well. They were a great Liverpool side, of course, and they did beat us 2-1. I think it was a late goal from Steve Nicol actually that won them that game, but that was quite a memorable one. The following season, 88-89, again it was a real memorable opening day away at Wimbledon. They just won the FA Cup, of course, the season before, if you remember. They beat Liverpool in the final at Wembley. They actually had the FA Cup on display on the pitch before the game. Of course, Arsenal took over Plough Lane that day. Arsenal fans were everywhere, and it was a great start to the season. Of course, a season that would ultimately see us win the league. We won 5-1 that day. Alan Smith scored a hat-trick. If you remember, that was a summer where we'd been after Tony Cottee as a striker. In the end, he chose Everton. And funnily enough, Tony Cottee did score a hat-trick for Everton on his debut that opening day weekend as well. But Alan Smith scored a hat-trick for us, and of course he went on to win the Golden Boot as well. That was a great day. That was a great performance as well against a Wimbledon side who traditionally, of course, caused us a lot of problems. The following year, 89-90, we were obviously league champions when our first game was up at Old Trafford against Manchester United. That was the game, if you remember, it was Michael Knighton who was taking over the club, or rumoured to be, came onto the pitch and had a kickabout, didn't he? For those of you old enough to remember that. That game turned out to be a bit of a disaster for us, actually. We did score in the first half. David Rocastle scored for us to make it 1-1, but in the end, Manchester United ran out 4-1 winners. So that wasn't the best of starts to the season, and it turned out to be quite a disappointing season in the end. Of course, defending the title didn't go particularly well. 1990-91, again we were back at Plough Lane at Wimbledon for the first game. Unusually, that was twice in 3 seasons where we were there. And again, it was the start of a title winning season. We started in great form. We won 3-0. Alan Smith scored again, and it was actually Perry Grove scored a great goal in that game at the end. He came on as a sub. It was David Seaman's debut as well. And of course, if you remember, he hadn't been a popular signing because it meant we'd lost John Lukic, but he kept a clean sheet that day and generally played really well. So he soon won us over, didn't he? But that was his debut there at Wimbledon on the opening day in 1990. We won 3-0. The following season, 91-92, opening game of the season was at home to QPR. Disappointing performance actually, considering we'd gone unbeaten. We'd lost just one game the season before winning the league. We started that game, we were pretty flat. We were 1-0 down, and it wasn't until right at the very end Paul Merson equalised to make it 1-1. But that was a disappointing game, a disappointing start to the season. Of course, again, it was a disappointing defence of the title, wasn't it? We then moved into the first Premier League season, of course, 92-93. The first game was at home to Norwich. If you remember, the mural at the North Bank for the first time. In the first half of that game, we started really well. We went 2-0 up through Steve Bold and Kevin Campbell. Things were looking great, but as we found difficult early in that season scoring in front of the mural end in the second half, we didn't manage to do it. Norwich came back and won 4-2. And then the following season against Coventry on the opening day, we lost. We got a heavy defeat at home again, losing 3-0 at home to Coventry. If you remember, we just won the FA Cup the season before, the League Cup as well. And that was a disappointing game. I remember Mickey Quinn scored a hat-trick for Coventry that day. That was when the clock in the course was being redeveloped at that particular time. Then 94-95, we started the season at home again. Another home game against Manchester City this time. We did win 3-0. That was a very difficult season, if you remember. It proved to be George Graham's last season. There was a good atmosphere that day, though, because we'd won the Cup Winners' Cup, if you remember, at the end of the previous season. Only our second ever European trophy. There was a bit of a party atmosphere at Highbury. We did win 3-0 with goals from Kevin Campbell, Ian Wright and a Keith Curl own goal. So we started that season well, but that would be a very difficult season. We finished 12th in the league, if you remember. The following season, 95-96, it was a big opening day for us because it was Dennis Bergkamp's debut and David Platt's as well, although obviously the focus was on Dennis Bergkamp. And of course it was Bruce Rioch's first game in charge as well. It ended up a 1-1 draw with Middlesbrough, so it wasn't the greatest start to the season. Dennis didn't score, unfortunately. It was Ian Wright that got our goal, and I say it was a 1-1 draw against Middlesbrough, which wasn't the best result really. It wasn't what we was expecting. 96-97, of course, we started that season with no permanent manager because Bruce Rioch had been sacked. We had to wait a few weeks for Arsene Wenger to take over. So I think Stuart Houston was in charge for that particular game. It was against West Ham at home again, and we did win 2-0. First half goals from John Hartson and a Dennis Bergkamp penalty. Of course, that turned out to be a decent season in the end, didn't it, when Arsene Wenger arrived. 97-98 was actually the first season of the Premier League era that we started away from home, funnily enough. All them home games. This was an away game up at Leeds. Again, it was a baking hot day, I remember. We came away with a 1-1 draw. Ian Wright scored the goal again for us. It was debuted for Mark Overmars, made his debut. Gilles Grimondi did as well, and Emmanuel Petit. So it was a new look side. Of course, we'd win the double that season, wouldn't we? So, but we started with a 1-1 draw up at Leeds, which was an okay result. You know, it was a good game. The following season, 98-99, again as champions. This time we were at home again. Nottingham Forest were the opposition, and we did win 2-1. The goals that day were scored by Emmanuel Petit and Mark Overmars, and they actually were the first time overseas players had scored on the opening day of the season for us as well. So we won 2-1 in that game. The following season, 99-2000, again it saw a debut of a high profile player. It was Thierry Henry, came on as a sub in that game for his debut against Leicester. He didn't score, he did look quite lively. We won 2-1. Dennis Bergkamp scored for us, and it was an own goal, if you remember, a really strange own goal from Frank Sinclair, wasn't it, for Leicester, that gave us the victory that day. A really bizarre own goal there. If you get a chance to see it on YouTube, maybe check it out, because it was a quite a strange goal. Then in 2000-2001, we had a long trip up to Sunderland for the first game of the season. Robert Pires made his debut. We actually lost that game 1-0. If you remember, Niall Quinn scored the goal with a header, and Patrick Vieira got sent off, which was the start of a run of a few sendings off on the opening day that we suffered through the early part of the 2000s actually. In 2001 we were back in the North East away at Middlesbrough. Of course, the season we'd go on to win the double. We started in fine start. It was a 4-0 win. The goals were from Thierry Henry, a Robert Pires penalty, and then substitute Dennis Bergkamp scored twice. And of course that was Sol Campbell's debut, which I spoke about that again on a video I did on Sol Campbell a few weeks back as well. 2002-2003, as league champions, we started with a home game against newly promoted Birmingham City. We comfortably won that 2-0. It was Sylvain Wiltord and Thierry Henry with those goals. Fairly uneventful game, if we're honest. 2003-2004, of course, the season, the invincible season. The first game was at home to Everton. We did win 2-1 with 10 men. If you remember, Sol Campbell got sent off, didn't he? But we did win 2-1. The goals were a Thierry Henry penalty, and Robert Pires won us that game with 10 men. So another sending off on the opening day. So 2004-2005, of course, we were still pushing on to this. We were heading towards the record for unbeaten games in the top flight. The record was 42. The opening day of the season was our 40th, and we beat Everton. We was away at Everton, and we won that game 4-1. Really good performance. Jose Antonio Reyes scored. Dennis Bergkamp, Freddie Ljungberg, and Robert Pires got the goals that day. We won 4-1. Really impressive start to the season. And in the last season at Highbury, 2005-2006, we began with a home game against Newcastle United. We won 2-0, fairly comfortable again. Thierry Henry penalty and Robin van Persie scored those goals. Then into the Emirates era, of course, the first game of the season that year, 2006-2007, was our first competitive game at the Emirates against Aston Villa. We drew 1-1. Gilberto, of course, scored. That's another game I featured on a video quite recently as well. 2007-2008 was a season where we went close to winning the league. If you remember that first game, it was against Fulham at home, and we were 1-0 down early on. It was a terrible mistake from Jens Lehmann, if you remember, and it wasn't until the final few minutes that we came back to win. A Robin van Persie penalty, and then Alexander Hleb got the winning goal, didn't he, deep into stoppage time, to give us a win. That's the last time we played Fulham on the first game as well, so that was quite a dramatic ending there. So we went 1-2-1. 2008-2009, it was West Bromwich Albion. We were at home on the first day of the season. Samir Nasri scored on his debut as we won 1-0. Of course, he went on to have a decent career at Arsenal before incurring the wrath of the fans by moving on to Manchester City, of course. Then 2009-2010 proved to be our biggest ever opening day victory. We was away up at Everton. Fantastic day, a fantastic performance. We won 6-1, if you remember. Denilson scored, William Gallas, Thomas Vermaelen on his debut. Of course, he ended up scoring quite a few goals from defence, didn't he, until injuries ended his career with us. Cesc Fabregas scored 2, and Eduardo as well, come off the bench, back from his injury, of course, and scored as well. We won 6-1. Fantastic start to the season that was. The season, of course, unfortunately wouldn't end particularly well. In 2010-2011, we were back up back in Merseyside at Liverpool at Anfield this time. That was quite an eventful game as well. It was the debut of Laurent Koscielny. Of course, he got sent off in that game. Joe Cole actually as well. I think it was his debut for Liverpool. He got sent off as well. We were 1-0 down, but in the final minute we did equalise to get a 1-1 draw. Pepe Reina in Liverpool goal, he scored an own goal. It was a shot, I think it was Shamak, came off the post and hit Reina and went in to give us a 1-1 draw. Another baking hot day. 2011, 2012, another sending off on their debut. It was Gervinho, if you remember his debut up at Newcastle. He was sent off after a clash with Joey Barton. We drew 0-0 in that game with 10 men. Not the most memorable start to the season. Of course, things would get even worse, wouldn't they, with that defeat up at the 8-2 at Old Trafford coming a couple of weeks later. 2012, 2013, getting a bit more up to date now. We was at home to Sunderland. We drew 0-0. That was Santi Cazorla's debut, Olivier Giroud as well. We drew 0-0 with Sunderland, not the greatest start to the season. In fact, we started that season with 2 0-0 draws for the first time ever. 2013, 2014, of course, that would be the season where we would end the 9-year trophy drought by winning the FA Cup. But of course, if you remember, the opening day of the season was the game where we lost 3-1 at home to Aston Villa. Laurent Koscielny got sent off again. Olivier Giroud had given us the lead, but we did lose 3-1. And that was a game that really thrust Arsenal Fan TV, AFTV, into the spotlight, didn't it? After that game, a few rants and raves on there after we lost that game. But of course, we did win the FA Cup that season, so things wasn't quite as bad as was portrayed. Then 2014, 2015, we were at home again on the first day. Crystal Palace, this was. Laurent Koscielny, another opening day headline for him. He actually scored in this game. Aaron Ramsey scored as well as we won 2-1. So that was a good start to that season. Of course, we won the FA Cup again for the second year in a row. 2015, 2016, of course, was the debut of Petr Cech in goal. We were at home to West Ham. Cech had a bit of a nightmare, and we lost 2-0. So we don't really want to dwell on that too much. The following year, 2016, 2017, was another home defeat on the first day against Liverpool. That was an exciting game, if you remember. We actually lost 4-3. We did lead 1-0. Theo Walcott scored, having earlier missed a penalty. We then found ourselves 4-1 down. I think it was Mane's debut for Liverpool. I think he might have scored a couple of goals that day. We were 4-1 down. We did stage a bit of a comeback with Chambers and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain scoring. That was actually the debuts for Rob Holding and Granit Xhaka. They must have wondered what they're letting themselves in for. But of course, you know, that turned out to be a good season in the end, didn't it? We won the FA Cup again, although we did miss out on the top 4 by 1 point to Liverpool, actually. So that game proved to be quite crucial in the end. But an exciting game nonetheless, just unfortunately we didn't get the result. Now, 2017, 2018, of course, Arsene Wenger's last season, there was another 7-goal thriller on the opening day. That was against Leicester City, if you remember, at the Emirates. We won 4-3 this time. Alexander Lacazette scored within 2 minutes of his debut with a nice little header. I think it was El Neni put the cross in. And then Welbeck had scored as well. But in the end, it took late goals from Aaron Ramsey and Olivier Giroud to win us that game 4-3. A really exciting start to the season, but of course, that would be a difficult season, wouldn't it? And Arsene Wenger, of course, left at the end of the season. So 2018, 2019, almost up to date now. Unai Emery's first game was at home to Manchester City. Really tough start for him. We lost 2-0, and I remember thinking how confused the team looked. It wasn't a great performance at all, was it? I mean, I know Man City had a great season that year, didn't they? They won the treble, but even so, it was a very poor performance from Arsenal that day. We lost 2-0. And then right up to date, of course, last season seems like a long time ago now, doesn't it? The start of the 2019-2020 season, away at Newcastle. Again, it was a very disjointed Arsenal performance. Quite a young team that we played, if you remember. But we did win the game 1-0. Goal in the second half from Aubameyang. To win us that game. So that's all the opening days really through the years. Some of them obviously a lot more memorable than others. Just a couple of little statistics going into the Fulham game. We've actually only won 3 of our last 10 opening day fixtures, so we've generally had a habit of starting quite slowly, although we have won 2 of the last 3. But away from home, obviously we are away on Saturday against Fulham. We're actually unbeaten in our last 6. The last 6 times we've played away on the opening day, we haven't lost. We've won 4 and drawn 2. We haven't actually lost our away game, our first game if it's away, since 2001. No, since 2000, sorry, that game at Sunderland, remember, where we lost 1-0 when Vieira was sent off and Niall Quinn scored. So that's the last time we actually lost away from home on the opening day of the season. So, you know, we've got quite a decent record there away from home. So hopefully we can take that in to Saturday. So that's that video there, just looking back on the opening days that I can remember through the time I've been following the club and going to games. I hope that brought back a few memories, some good and some not so good. Let's hope that Saturday brings us some good memories. The first game, I said, so it is always exciting. It's a great day, isn't it? So I know it's unfortunate this year we can't have fans there, which is disappointing. But hopefully the news is that we should be able to get Co back into grounds quite soon at reduced numbers. So let's try and look at the positives on that. But it'd be disappointing, obviously, to miss the boat trip up the Thames to Fulham. So say that's that video there. If you like that, if it brought back some good memories for you, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel as well. Click on the subscribe button below if you like what I'm doing. There will be some more videos coming up this week as we head towards the new season. I'm hoping to get a live show in as well at some point this week. There's a lot going on, so I'm not sure whether I'll be able to squeeze one in, but hopefully I can. So look out for that. I'll obviously promote it if I do manage to do that. And let's hope that, say, on Saturday we can reflect on, look back on a good opening day with some good memories for us to look back on in years to come, and not one of the disappointing ones that we've also suffered as well over the years. So that's that for today. So I hope you enjoyed that. And of course, in the meantime, as we move into the new season, come on you Gunners!